What's a sign someone is secretly miserable? Story 1. One sign is when someone's always cracking jokes or acting overly cheerful, but avoids talking about how they're actually feeling. They might also pull away from close friends or suddenly lose interest in things they used to love. It's like they're trying to keep up a happy front so no one notices they're struggling inside. Answer: oof. This hit hard. I suppressed my feelings for months, so much so I developed IBS. I was tired of people worrying about me. However, last week, I finally got vulnerable and called a friend in a bad place. He immediately offered to come over and take me for a drive. Felt really good. Some people made me feel ashamed of my feelings, so I buried them. But my friends will always be there for me. Nice to be reminded of that. Story 2. Unable to feel joy for others' accomplishments in life. Like when someone talks about getting married, they will bring up divorce or cheating. Story 3. Very irritable, takes things personally, spaces out a lot, not as talkative as they used to be, and quiet. Basically describing myself as immiserable at the moment. Story 4. They are always smiling and laughing when around others. But the second they're alone, the mask drops. The smile fades and their eyes fill with emptiness. You can see it if you walk on them or surprise them with your persons. They don't have the time to put on the full mask, seepy for few seconds. It's just an odd smile fills with panic. Answer: that's interesting. That's my answer as well. Originally, I thought that I was the one to wear the mask to be the extroverted social butterfly music-loving engineer anomaly in tech. When I got home, I'd retreat a bit, and while not being antisocial, just not pursuing the dopamine hit. If I get interrupted whilst recharging my social battery, I'll grin and bear it. 9/10. It was an excellent adventure for me to grin and bear and then not give a shoot about it. I live between an unmasked and not ever truly wearing the mask, and at the end of it all, it's a wonderful bridge to maintain. Story 5. They just sit in their car for an extended period of time before starting their journey or getting out. Story 6. Well, there's lots of signs, but drinking a lot and putting on weight would be one of the most obvious physical indications that someone is unhappy. Story 7. When they are never actually unhappy or emotionally open around anyone, the people who grin through it and try to hide their own suffering in order to keep others happy are the ones that are the worst off on their own. Story 8. They go out of their way to help others. Not to say that everyone who helps others is miserable, but I've never been more motivated to be there for others' tough times than when I was going through my own shoot. I guess I did it thinking that helping others would make me feel better about myself. Story 9. People who are always joking or overly happy might be hiding sadness. Avoiding feelings or acting distant can be signs too. Story 10. When they constantly put people down for no reason, to me, it comes off as them having their own insecurities. Story 11. Someone who dominates a conversation to make it all about themselves. When in a discussion, they can't wait to insert themselves to share their story without listening to others. Doesn't ask questions about others and is only interested in talking about themselves. They're miserable because they don't know how to connect with others and are baffled as to why people avoid them. Story 12. They go to work, come home, do nothing the rest of the day, and go back to work the next day. They stay home on their days off to re-energize because they burn out easily and need time alone. Repeat this cycle for a decade or two. Story 13. Disproportionately angry or quick to anger. Excessively talk shoot about people, their flaws, weaknesses. This is different from being brutally honest or just venting about someone. We all have issues with PPL sometimes. Discouraging of people. SP, when it's people trying to change for the better or who have a big goal. This is different from having realistic expectations about people, their goals, or their behavior. If that person does make the change and shocks everyone's expectations, this person is the one person in the room who isn't happy. It's like they wanted the person to fail. Too judgmental about people. SP flawed or struggling people. Doesn't give space for gray area, nuance, understanding. Can't fathom the concept that others have a different lived experience. Very quickly picture themselves going through the same struggle or trauma and mastering it or making the most out of it. Jealous of others, particularly those more successful. This is different from recognizing when someone is arrogant or has a big ego. They will be jealous regardless. Whether the person is cocky or humble about the achievement, post on social media in a highly curated or performative way. Doesn't admit blame or shortcomings. Blames others for their misfortunes. This is different from being actually victimized. When you point out flaws in their plan, their goals, or their thinking, they are disproportionately angry at you. They shoot the messenger. It's like they hadn't thought of the flaw or potential issue in their plan and are now mad at you for pointing it out. Doesn't let others shine or feels threatened by others temporarily shining. Winners respect the challenge and those who come close. Losers feel the need to sabotage anyone who comes close. Story 14. Asking the same old questions on this crappy site, hoping, praying for just a little bit of human interaction before vanishing back into the void. Story 15. When they are constantly picking you apart, your personality, your looks, how you act, e.g., it is all down to projection of their own insecurities. I used to have a friend who was like this. It was a nightmare, and I'm happier to get rid of her. I remember thinking, I didn't even do anything or say anything. Story 16. Gaining weight, sleeping all the time, always scrolling, zoning out a lot, abusing substances, adult beverage in private. I could go on and on. Story 17. Non-stop comparing themselves to everyone else, bringing it back to them anytime something nice happens to someone else. Story 18. If someone is secretly miserable, they won't show signs. That's the whole point of the secretly part. My best friend's dad was the happiest guy we knew. Guess what? He hung himself in his own garage. Story 19. They lower their voice. I didn't realize I had been doing that for at least a year when I was in a job that was eliminate me. I knew I was isolating, but I also have anxiety, so I chalked the isolation up to that. It took my friend telling me I was lowering my voice to speak for me to notice. And then I realized I'd been doing that for a year or more. I finally reached out to my doctor a few months ago after realizing that the only thing keeping me above ground was my parents. I still have a lot of things I'm working on and I'm getting better, but I have a long way to go. I tell my parents every day how much I love them and thank them for everything they have done and continue to do for me. And my doctor has been my primary for over 20 years, so he knows me well and has been incredibly sensitive and supportive as well. I would not be here without them. I know I have a long way to go yet, but I am training myself to focus on what I have accomplished instead of what I have not accomplished. And I'm so lucky to have my incredible support system. It sucks being miserable, but I'm trying really hard to find my happiness again. Story 20. Sleeping when I am supposed to be in church, my curtains are not up. It's 11:44 a.m. and I am so miserable, but I want to stay alone. Shout out to everyone commenting. At least I know I am not alone in this. Story 21. if they feel the need to document how happy they are. Social media is full of miserable people posting flawless photos of themselves and their families to prove to everyone that they have the perfect life. Story 22. Always saying how great and successful and happy they are. Those people are often the more messed up. Story 23. Being the funny one and/or constantly going out of their way to please others. For me, it's how I cope. I would do anything in my power to keep someone from feeling the way I do inside if I can put a smile on their face for even a moment. I can take comfort in knowing that even if that person is suffering internally, I might just have succeeded in helping them forget about it momentarily. Story 24. The eyes. Always watch the eyes. They'll show you. If you're patient and observant, true misery has a look. Story 25. Whenever anyone at work asks me, "Hi, how are you?" and I say miserable, or "Everything okay?" and I say no, those are the general hints I give out. So far, very few people have picked up the subtle nuances of it though, so I may have to be more direct. Story 26. Not quite as secret as some others, but still, pessimism. Expecting things to be difficult, to turn out worse for you than they do for others, expecting yourself to perform worse, etc. It might sometimes be done in a joking manner or in a stone-cold realist manner, but in the end, it's self-sabotage. Thinking things aren't going to work out leads you to act like things won't work out until you finally cause them to not work out. That way, you get the satisfaction of feeling in control at the cost of ruining your own happiness. Story 27. The most common from what I've came across, a miserable person can go one of two ways: completely isolated and way too kind, or an insufferable bully. Story 28. The friend or coworker who is always kind and friendly during casual conversations, but becomes oddly guarded and hastily changes the subject when it's their turn to share something about their own life. I can see in their eyes momentarily that they may be battling something privately. Story 29. They put such a positive message out every day, filling up everyone's cup, putting others first, and neglecting themselves. When no one else is around, they will not put on this act, and they feel helpless and so low they feel like ending it, so they make themselves as busy as possible with others. They are the extreme people pleasers because they can't find comfort in themselves, and they feel worthless, and they only see their worth in being there for others. They are afraid to govern any indication of their real feelings, meaning if they are in a complete slump and unable to stop crying, they will not leave the house, and they will make up an excuse for fear of letting their misery be known. They are always happy and full of life to everyone. It's a shock when they take their own life. Everyone says, "I can't believe it," but it's there to see if anyone queries, how come they are always up and there's never a hint of down? Or, how come they disappear sometimes? Or, I wonder why they prefer to chat and laugh instead of really talking. Story 30. When they make fun of you for doing normal things, usually those normal things are the ones they don't have. Story 31. When they are constantly chasing something one after another or chronic, trying to prove themselves to themselves. Story 32. Being always negative, having a hard time giving compliments, staying in a job relationship that is toxic. Story 33. They are filling their time excessively, or they are withdrawing, especially if it ranges between both. Story 34. They post too many gushing pics, captions of their significant other on social media. Biggest red flag: a couple is not in fact happy. Story 35. They moan about everyone in their life, friends, family, work colleagues, partner, because they're the problem. Story 36. They act as though physical qualities make somebody better than or less than. These people are so insecure in their talents and capabilities that they resort to qualities they are inherently born with to put themselves above others. Racists or misogynists are a great example of this. Story 37. When someone goes through a divorce after 13 years of marriage, finds out they are asexual but can't afford therapy, is laid off from their long-term job due to tariff issues, and can't find another job as the economy sucks. But this someone has such a tight hold on their emotions that no one sees everything lying beneath that everything is all right exterior. Ask me how I know. Story 38. Doom scrolling. I don't like dealing with the real world, so 10 to 12 hours of constant doom scrolling helps. Not really, but hey, whatever. Story 39. You get this point not secretly, but scared when seeing a lot. Notifications like on social media, cutting people off, scared of seeing new texts due to pressure of trying to be cheerful and putting on a mask again, tired, accidentally lashing out on someone you've always been sweet to and immediately apologizing and oversharing. Story 40. Honestly, there are obvious signs, but also it can often be very, very difficult to notice if you aren't very alert to the small signs, especially if it's someone who is regularly happy or always expected to be and who is relied on by everyone. Story 41. I'm openly miserable, but on my worst days when I'm struggling the most not to do bad things, I take it out on strangers. The worse I feel, the kinder, warmer, and more helpful I will be. Seeing other people feel the way I want to, because of my actions, lets me live through them for a bit. Story 42. Entitled behavior. Chances are that everyone around them are walking on eggshells and at least one or all of their close relationship is suffering. Story 43. Going out of their way to make sure no one around them is miserable. Some of the kindest, most caring people I've met have been the most depressed people I've met. And it's always because they don't want others to feel the way they do. Story 44. They project their insecurities on others. They think everyone in a happy relationship are faking it, so they are just negative on anyone happy. Story 45. Usually the ones always joking or saying, "I'm fine too fast," or they start pulling away and blame it on being tired. Little things like that. Story 46. Getting lost in their phones all the time, even in company. That'll sure make people miserable anyway when they lose connections in a social setting. Story 47. Overly self-critical despite achievements, or a forced cheerfulness that doesn't quite reach their eyes. Look for the quiet desperation. Story 48. Being a jerk all the time, bullying someone. Too much dramatic emotions for literally everything, and eating too much. Story 49. They make a huge deal out of patriotically standing up for their rights against Walmart door greeters who ask to see their receipt. Bonus points when they post about their brave act of service and valor on Facebook and Nextdoor, or they record and upload it. Story 50. People who fail to understand that sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're miserable. Develop the tools to help you recognize when you're miserable and how to get out of it. The process is relatively simple. Get outside even in rainy weather. Just be outside of the four walls of your house. Focus on your interactions. If you are running errands or shopping, lean into a positive interaction with the server. Sometimes that isn't possible as they might be standoffish, but try and find a moment of zen and be a rainbow in their cloud. Story 51. I've had friends like this. constantly playing victim, picking faults at you that you don't see as an issue. Within reason, but usually projection. External locum of control, can't take accountability, doesn't celebrate your wins. Jealousy, and jokes at your expense. Story 52. Shorter-term stuff, like trauma depression brought on by a personal life event. Any unexplained but clear change in behavior. Suddenly goes from eating like a horse to just barely finishing a small breakfast. Isolationist behavior where they may have previously been quite social, pacing throughout the day. Sudden overuse of social media or other forms of quick dopamine distraction. A lot of talking to themselves. Notable increase in work output, not always good output, but constant source of distraction from life. Smiles and laughs less or shorter time. Reaches out to a lot of people, but shallow in how they interact with them. Self-centered attitude as they have little mental emotional energy to give out whilst they are suffering internally. Suddenly making plans to go out do stuff regularly with people, often not very present in mind when the time comes around. Loss of future sight ambition. The list is generally endless. Story 53. Rapid weight gain unintended loss. Sloppier appearance, stops showing up to social events, not sleeping well, short-tempered, snappy. Story 54. As someone who is miserable, I don't talk to anybody about how I really feel. If you ask me, I will just say, I am okay with a smile. I drink a lot these days, almost every day. I don't socialize at all. I haven't cut my hair in a long time. Very irritable. I space out a lot. I take things personally. This is slowing going away because I just don't give AF. Story 55. When the person doesn't really care about their hygiene, has sudden mood changes, like from happy to sad or angry, dirty room with next to no organization, stress eating and overthinking things too much, or taking simple things too personally. For example, when a friend isn't texting that much anymore because they got stuff to do, and you only think about how you could have scared them away by accident, or that you may have texted too much or bothered them too much with your own problems. I could go on and on with this, cause most of the things I have right now. Story 56. You hit them with the generic, "How are you?" and they respond with some variation of living the dream, another day in paradise. Nightmares are dreams too, guys. Story 57. Smoking. I know that when I was a smoker, I spent a lot of time hating myself. I would promise myself every night that I'd stop. I'd wake up the next morning and struggle to stick to my convictions. Just one with my coffee. I'd get depressed because I felt stupid for doing it in the first place, so I'd light up to distract myself and get the nicotine high. It was a vicious cycle that kept me in a trap of depression, but around everybody, I felt like I was hiding it well. Cigarettes are legal, popular, and were maybe still are what the cool kids use. Let me tell you, I was miserable. Story 58. Overcompensating by laughing and smiling an unusual amount. Also, answering questions aimed at them with a quick answer like, "Everything's great, thanks," and then redirecting it to someone else like, "But anyway, how are you?" Also, in personal experience, I used to pretend I was tired very early on in the evening, or that I had a headache, so that I could go to bed early and just lie there in the dark. I also used to pretend I was busy or ill to avoid doing things with other people, even simple things like watching TV with my family. Story 59. Talk less, smile less, house is all dark, even hey she's at home, has less appetite, and someone who suddenly craves adult beverage or who smokes. Story 60. Not talking about their stuff, only short regulated answers. Consuming too much adult beverage, getting angry about little things, not being able to smile with their eyes, when they look around in absence and don't share communication, when they lose interest in something they used to love. Story 61. When they are staring off and no expression on their face and not really paying attention or talking with others like friends, family, whatever. Story 62. When they literally beg people to be their friend or just talk to them because they're so lonely, but nobody ever reaches out, just reads their comment and moves on. Story 63. Self-care, procrastination, poor dieting, drinking, smelling your own farts, self-care, low self-esteem, aggression, anxiety, depression, short-temperedness, and self-care. Story 64. Turning into an overly angry person and also overcoming fears. Deep into my depression, I stopped being scared of things I used to be terrified of. For example, I used to be very scared of spiders, but at some point I just stopped caring. This might be something others view as a good thing, but in reality, someone might be very miserable. Story 65. Dyeing hair blue, adopting social justice causes, talking about redistribution of wealth. Go on unhinged diatribes because of the hat someone wears.